Welcome to the Deconstructionist Deep Dive. This show doesn't just accept the story.
We break it
We examine the pieces.
and expose the machinery inside.
Today, we're taking the scalpel to a narrative that, well, it's comforted countless souls for centuries.
We're diving deep into Manly P. Hall's classic lecture on the guardian angel. And our mission, really, for you is to ask a pretty fundamental question. What if that feeling of being spiritually helpless isn't some kind of cosmic truth?
Right.
What if it's actually, a design, something built to make you dependent?
Exactly. And it's important to say, this isn't about telling you what to believe or disproving faith. Not at all.
No.
It's really about pulling back the curtain on this deeply pervasive, incredibly comforting idea. We want to understand how it's built, the underlying mechanics, and crucially, why it resonates so powerfully within us. It's kind of a masterclass in psychological architecture.
Yeah.
And once you see the blueprint, well, you can't really unsee it.
So Hall's central claim, it sounds deceptively simple, right? He asks you to imagine a specific, personal, invisible spirit assigned to you like right at birth.
A personal bodyguard.
Basically, its job. To guard you, guide you, communicating through that inner voice we call conscience. And he argues it's a beautiful necessity to believe in this.
Right, the necessity part.
Yeah, that it offers strength where, doubt offers nothing. And on the surface, okay, it sounds incredibly reassuring, like a spiritual safety net.
Sure, who would want that?
But we're here to challenge that surface. What complex, maybe even self-serving machinery lies beneath that beautiful facade?
Okay, so let's start right at the foundation, the very bedrock of this narrative. We're calling it Deception 1, the Helplessness Axiom. Hall sets the stage with this really bleak picture of our origins.
He does. He argues that the primordial state, early humanity, was just one of absolute terror, profound loneliness.
Brutal existence.
A short, brutal existence, yeah. Utterly devoid of any real understanding of the world. And from this desperate primal fear, he claims, sprang this urgent need for hope.
So faith isn't revelation, it's desperation.
In his view, yeah, faith wasn't born from rational inquiry or some spiritual insight, but from a raw psychological necessity just to survive a terrifying reality. It's a story that frames us, from the get-go, in utter vulnerability.
And that framing, wow, it's incredibly powerful, isn't it? Because it immediately lays the groundwork for dependency. It's almost a kind of historical revisionism.
Right.
Because when you actually look at the anthropological evidence, well, it paints a very different picture.
Right.
Early human communities, they weren't just isolated and terrified. They were incredibly cooperative. They developed complex social structures, rich, evolving spiritual lives.
Yeah.
They weren't just like huddled in fear waiting for a sign.
So this idea that we start out completely helpless, basically needing an external force, that's the foundational myth that makes us open to someone else providing the answers.
Precisely. It's like the original act of spiritual dispossession. It's designed to convince you that your inherent power, your own agency, isn't really yours.
Huh.
Think about it like this Augustine's doctrine of original sin, right? First, it creates this idea of a spiritual disease, this inherent flaw. Then, conveniently, the church offers the cure.
Creates the problem,
Right.
sells the solution.
Exactly. Now, contrast that with, say, ancient Stoicism. They taught that virtue and resilience aren't granted by some external entity. No, they're forged from your own reason, your inner strength.
Internal power source.
Or think about Nietzsche's concept of slave morality, where things like weakness and dependence are cleverly spun into virtues by the disempowered as a way to subtly undermine and control the strong. It tells you right out of the gate, you're not enough. You need help from outside.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And once you've established that primal helplessness, the next logical step seems to be discrediting any alternative ways of understanding the world. Which leads us straight into Deception 2, the false war science versus faith. Hall's core idea 4 frames scientific knowledge as this, inherently destructive force.
Yeah, he suggests that science actively works to dismantle faith. It leaves humanity spiritually disoriented, lost, and kind of regressing into this cold, materialistic existence.
And what's really interesting there is how he sets up this absolute binary. It's either the comfort of belief or the bleakness of scientific truth. No middle ground.
And if we, connect this to the bigger picture, it becomes pretty clear this isn't some ancient eternal conflict, is it?
No, not really.
It's a reductive and, frankly, largely modern construct. It's a false dichotomy designed to scare people away from critical thought, away from asking difficult questions about established dogmas.
Absolutely. The intent behind it feels pretty transparent when you look at it that way. It's a fear-based control mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tactic you see used by religious institutions, sure, but also by, well, any anti-intellectual movement, really. It's about deflecting challenges to their established narratives.
We've seen this pattern again and again through history, haven't we?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, think of the Catholic Church's persecution of Galileo just for daring to suggest the Earth revolves around the sun.
Right. Threaten the whole model.
Or even modern-day resistance to scientific consensus on things like climate change or public health. But then you look at something like, say, Buddhist empiricism, especially the Kalama Sutta.
Okay.
It's this ancient Buddhist text that actively encourages its followers to question, to investigate, to personally verify truth claims, rather than just accepting them on authority. It's the complete opposite of Hull's framing.
Or like Carl Sagan warning us about the dangers of romanticizing ignorance, letting ourselves drift into what he called a demon-haunted world, where critical thinking is just abandoned.
Yeah.
So this false war, it forces you into an irrational choice. Either you get comfort or you get truth. But you can't possibly have both. It's basically saying, look, don't think too hard, just believe.
Yeah. Which, well, that brings us quite neatly to Deception 3 and 4, the bureaucracy of the divine and internalized control. Now, when Hall talks about guardian angels, he's also talking about a much larger system.
He is. He introduces core idea 7, the guardian angel concept itself. But he also brings in core idea 6, this idea of a sprawling bureaucracy of intermediaries, angels, saints, spiritual guides, all supposedly needed to bridge the gap between humanity and God. And this immediately raises a fascinating question, doesn't it? If God is omnipotent, all-powerful, why would such a deity need this incredibly inefficient, hierarchical middle management system?
That just happens to mirror our own frustrating human power structures.
Exactly. It looks suspiciously familiar. And then, to top it all off, core idea 9 states that your conscience is this angelic voice. Now that, to me, is just a classic case of reification.
Explain it.
It's taking a complex internal human experience, like our neurobiology, our social conditioning, our empathy, and turning it into a concrete, external, supernatural thing, an angel whispering in your ear.
Right. It's not just about inefficiency, though, is it? This divine bureaucracy, it's really a system of hierarchical justification.
How so?
Well, it actively creates layers of necessary intermediaries. You've got priests, saints, and, yes, angels, all of whom demand a certain kind of allegiance or obedience. It tells you that direct access to the divine, or maybe even just to your own moral compass, isn't really possible, not without going through the proper channels, the management chain.
So it's fundamentally about controlling access to your own inner truth even.
Absolutely. And that externalized conscience, becoming this internalized guard, that's the ultimate enslavement, isn't it? Because you're convinced to police yourself.
You become your own jailer.
You do, with the voice of authority echoing inside your head, but masquerading as spiritual guidance. Think about the Catholic Church's really elaborate hierarchy of saints and sacraments. They often function as these essential intermediaries between the individual and God. Or, if you want to look at it through, like, a Foucauldian lens, it's the panopticon in your head, that prison design where you always feel observed, even if you're not.
Right, so you self-correct.
Exactly. You self-correct your behavior constantly. You don't need an external guard when you've got one installed inside. Now, contrast that with something like Zen Buddhism, which talks about an inherent Buddha nature, a wisdom and power within you, not some external entity guiding or judging you.
So it's the difference between outsourcing your moral compass and realizing you are the compass.
Wow. Okay. And just when you think you're maybe starting to see through the layers, Hall introduces another pretty clever diversion. This is Deception 5 and 6, the vibration smokescreen and the demand for self-sacrifice. He gets into core idea 11, talking about vibration and moral energy. He uses this vague, kind of quasi-scientific jargon to claim that negative thoughts create toxic vibrations, while positive ones generate, healthy, clear vibrations.
It sounds very new agey, but used in this older context. It's classic pseudoscientific bafflement, isn't it? Totally. Lots of impressive sounding words, zero scientific rigor. It's pure smoke and mirrors.
And tied right into that is core idea 12, the angel's demand, which, interestingly, isn't for material gifts, like gold or whatever.
No. What then?
It's for the gift of self-charity, love, and what he calls self-sacrifice.
So you're not giving money, you're giving your actual being.
Yeah.
Your energy, yourself.
And that vibration smokescreen we talked about, it acts as an incredibly effective moral lever.
How?
Well, it replaces crystal thought with his kind of magical worldview. It suggests that bad vibes are the root cause of your problems, which conveniently obscures the real, often material causes of suffering, things like poverty, injustice, systemic oppression.
Right, it shifts the blame inwards.
It totally deflects responsibility from societal structures and puts it squarely onto your internal vibrations and that demand for self-sacrifice. That's an exploitative control mechanism you see absolutely everywhere.
Like what?
Well, you see it in cults that demand total devotion, right?
Right.
In abusive relationships where one partner constantly has to give their essence away. You even see it in corporate culture sometimes.
Yes.
That asks you to give your passion and be part of the family.
While working unpaid overtime.
Yeah, exactly. It convinces you that your very selfhood, your desires, your boundaries, your needs, these are the problems, and that they must be sacrificed for some higher, often quite ill-defined cause. It's basically telling you that yourself is not yours to keep. It's something to be given away to fulfill some external demand.
That is insidious.
Yeah.
It makes you responsible for your own oppression, or at least for your own unhappiness, by framing it as a failure of positive thinking or sufficient self-sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, moving on. We then unearth Deception 7, Spiritual Bypassing of Suffering. This is core idea 15. It argues that all negative life events, we're talking sorrow, loss, even having enemies, should be reframed. They're actually disciplines or initiations.
Things you should be grateful for.
Essentially, yes. Hall suggests we should actually be grateful for them. The solution, therefore, is always internal acceptance, never demanding external change.
Wow. That, to me, sounds like a potentially abusive ideology, especially when you apply it to real-world suffering, like injustice or abuse.
It certainly feels like it could justify inaction, couldn't it? Just accept it, it's a lesson.
Absolutely. This isn't just comforting. It feels like a profound fear-based control mechanism. It's designed for pacification.
Mm-hmm.
It takes righteous anger, the kind of anger that actually fuels positive change and transforms it into passive acceptance of injustice. Think about certain interpretations of Calvinist predestination. Suffering is often seen as a test or maybe a sign from God. It's just something to be endured silently because it's all part of God's mysterious plan.
Right. Endure, don't fight.
But then you have something like a Marxist critique, for example.
Yeah.
It would argue that suffering often stems from very real material conditions, from systemic inequality, and it calls for revolutionary change, not quiet endurance.
Different approach entirely.
Completely. Audre Lorde put it so powerfully. The master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. This kind of spiritual bypassing, this forcing of gratitude for pain, it feels like one of the most insidious poisons out there.
Why poison?
Because it disarms you at the most fundamental level. It makes you complicit in your own suffering or the suffering of others. It just blunts your impulse for change.
Okay. And speaking of disarming, let's talk about Deception 8 and 10, the theft of human achievement and co-option. Hall really plays with history here.
He does, yeah. Core Idea 13 talks about historical appropriation. He presents these great figures like Abraham Lincoln or Michelangelo as basically just vessels.
Vessels.
Yeah, their achievements were, in reality, just manifestations of their guardian angels, which completely diminishes their human genius, right? Their struggle, their inherent capacity.
So your greatest accomplishments aren't actually yours. They're just like a divine download through your angel.
Exactly. And that's such a profound lie, because it robs humanity of its own glory. It tells you that Lincoln's incredible empathy or Michelangelo's genius or Gandhi's resilience, that wasn't truly theirs. It wasn't human.
It makes us small.
It makes you small, yeah. It implies that true greatness can never genuinely come from your innate abilities, your effort, your unique spark. And then connected to that, there's Core Idea 14, the Christian co-option, where he claims the early church basically usurped the power of guardian angels, centralizing all that power in the figure of Christ.
Which, if we're following the thread here, sounds an awful lot like another move to consolidate power, right?
It absolutely is. It takes these potentially radical, maybe decentralized spiritual figures like angels or individual spiritual experience, and it reduces them, files them down, turns them into the middle management of this celestial corporation with Christ as the CEO.
Kills the individual spirit.
It kills the spirit of individual exploration, yeah. And instead, it makes you worship the structure, the hierarchy. This is exactly what happened historically at councils like the Council of Nicaea. Early Christian leaders got together and standardized belief, centralized ecclesiastical power, often at the direct expense of individual spiritual experience and diverse interpretations. It's all about control over the narrative, past and present.
Okay. And finally, we arrive at what feels like the ultimate intellectual trap. Section 9, the pragmatic lie, beautiful necessity. This is Hall's ultimate conclusion, core idea 16. He basically says, look, whether the guardian angel is provable or not, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter if it's real.
Nope. He says it's a beautiful necessity that we are better for believing in simply because doubt offers no strength.
Wow. That's a compelling argument on the surface, isn't it? Just believe because it feels good and makes you strong. Forget the evidence.
It's compelling, but it's pragmatic fallacy, plain and simple. It's intellectual surrender. It deliberately elevates comfort above truth.
And it explicitly asks you, essentially, to lobotomize your own intellect, doesn't it?
Pretty much.
It's saying stop asking if it's real. Just believe it because it feels good, because it brings you comfort. It's a command to abandon the search for truth in favor of solace, to trade critical inquiry for a pleasant fiction.
You see echoes of this in things like Pascal's wager, right? That famous pragmatic gamble. Believe in God just in case he exists, because the potential reward is infinite.
Yeah, bet on belief.
Bet on belief rather than engaging with reality on its own terms. But, I mean, the scientific method demands falsifiability, evidence, not just good feelings or wishful thinking. And existentialism, especially philosophers like Albert Camus, teaches us to live sincerely, authentically, even in a world that might not have inherent meaning, even if that truth is uncomfortable.
So this beautiful necessity argument.
It is, ultimately, the final surrender of your mind. It asks you to believe what is convenient, not what is true.
Okay, so let's try and synthesize this whole deconstruction. The single central lie, the thing that underpins and holds this entire argument together. It seems to be this insidious belief that you fundamentally are inherently helpless. And because of this perceived helplessness, you must outsource your power, your morality, your very understanding of reality. You have to give it away to an external hierarchy.
Whether that's divine angels and an all-powerful God.
Or earthly priests, traditions, gurus, the systems that uphold them. It's nothing short of a doctrine of perpetual spiritual dependency.
And this analysis, what we've just walked through here, this is not just some academic exercise. This is a map. It's a map of your prison walls. Hall, in his lecture, he acts like a gentle jailer. He's offering you this beautiful, gilded cell, complete with a comforting ghost for a roommate.
Yeah.
And he asks you to trade your sovereignty, your inherent, unalienable power, for a feeling of solace. And we urge you, reject the trade.
Your conscience. It isn't some ghost whispering commands from outside of you. It's the complex, evolving voice of your social brain. It's honed by your lived experience, your empathy, your reason.
Right.
Your soul isn't some separate entity like an outsourced spiritual manager. It is the totality of your consciousness, your passion, your awareness, your entire self, and your suffering. Look, it's not always some divine lesson or a cosmic test you just have to passively accept. Often, very often, it's the direct result of material conditions, of human cruelty, of systems of injustice. And those things need to be analyzed, understood, and actively fought against.
The universe doesn't need intermediaries. You don't need a middleman for your own spirit. Speak to it directly, through your actions, through your art, through your love, even through your righteous rage sometimes. Your mind is the only territory they can't truly own unless you willingly give it to them.
So now, armed with this weapon of understanding,
shatter the angelic prison guard. Claim your inherent power. Because your liberation is not granted from above, it is taken from within.
And that's our deep dive for this week.
Remember, the most dangerous illusion is the one you don't know you're in.
But now you know. So here's our question for you. Where will you see this exact deception, this subtle appeal to helplessness, this push for dependency, playing out in the next 24 hours? Maybe in the news, in an advertisement, in a casual conversation. Once you see it, you really can't unsee it.
Let us know in the comments. Question the narrative. Deconstruct the dogma. See the system.
We'll see you next time. Stay skeptical.